Hi everyone, thanks for showing up for this meetup, for this talk about Express and serverless and how we can mix the two together. Just so I can kind of get the vibe, I know it's a Node meetup, but anyone using here Express? Okay, that's an obvious one. Anyone heard about serverless? Okay, pretty good. Anyone using serverless in production? Okay, a bit less. Okay, cool. So on the agenda today, we're going to see what is Lambda, what is serverless, obviously, where are my servers because it's serverless, how we can mix between Express and serverless. I'm going to touch slightly about offline testing and see where are my logs because, again, we don't have any servers, so where do we put the logs? And in a brief about securing your endpoints and how to keep secrets. So before I started writing the presentation, I decided to check, okay, what is the serverless trend? I mean, how trendy it is. And what do you do when you don't know? You ask Google. So if you can see the trend, so right about 2016, you can see the serverless trend is like spiking. Anyone care to guess what is the main location that serverless is being used, or at least people searching for? Anyone? California. Okay, close. It's going to be a shocker, but it's actually Seattle, where the AWS headquarters are. So that's not a big surprise. Yeah, so let's start with what is Lambda, what is serverless, basically. Can anyone hear me? Hear me okay? Yeah, good. Okay, so from the AWS product page, so they said that AWS Lambda is a serverless compute service that runs your code in response to event and automatically manages the underlying compute resources for you. To put into simple phrase, it basically means that there are no servers to provision or manage. So AWS does everything for you. You don't have SSH access. You don't have anything. I mean, they provide the infrastructure. So it's not actually serverless, but it's not your server. So it's kind of a mix between. And serverless and AWS Lambda is built to scale. So it means we don't need to worry about, all right, what is the cluster size that we need? Do we need one instance? Do we need two? When do we scale up? When we reach to 70% CPU, when we reach to, I don't know, 80% memory consumption, we don't care about all this stuff. I mean, AWS runs it for us, and the function just exits once it ends. And another kind of good thing about it is you never pay for idle functions, which means you pay, if you go to like the EC2 pricing page, you can see that you pay by the hour. For Lambda, you pay for what you use. So it means if you have a website and nobody is going to your website or hitting your APIs during the night, you pay nothing. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, when things are kind of starting to catch up, you can see a lot of frameworks for serverless. There are quite a bunch. Some are just for Python, some are for Node.js, some are mixed. And the one that we're going to focus on is serverless. Okay. So the serverless starts with a basic YAML file, which defines the main three parts. One is your service name. So that's any name that you want to call your service. It can be an API. It can be anything, basically. And then you need And then you need to set up the provider. So in this case, we're talking about AWS. And you need to set the region. So in this case, we're talking about London. And we're going to use Node.js 8.1. The next part is where you define kind of the handlers or the functions. So you can see we have like two functions. One of them, they're quite simple. There's nothing kind of complicated about them. We define two handlers. And we define the, I wish I had a pointer, but we define the path in one of them goes to v1 hello and one goes to v1 goodbye. So that's kind of pretty straightforward. And if we look at I hope everyone can see the code. It's a bit tiny. But I mean, the serverless function itself, the Lambda function, is a pretty basic Node.js code. So we get the input in the event or the context. Context is like a map of key values. And we return a response. That's pretty much it. I mean, you return a JSON response, and AWS does it for you. You can see we can also take things from the event, like the query string parameters, and also append them to the JSON and do whatever business logic we want to do. OK. I'm going to show you a very quick demo. Hopefully, I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. Yeah. OK, so I have my serverless Yama file. Now I need to, oops, how do you make it bigger here? Yeah, not in VS Code. I don't know. All right, so basically it's the same YAML file I showed you in the slides. So what I'm going to do a quick deployment. So SLS is a shortcut for serverless, and we're going to deploy the two functions that we saw on the slides. And we're going to I'm choosing like a test profile for AWS, because you can define multiple profiles on your credentials file. So that's going to take some time. You can see that the serverless is starting to package your service. It's uploading. Serverless behind the scene is a cloud formation, which means they kind of handle the whole pipeline. You're going to see soon. It's going to take a few seconds, and hopefully OK, that's great. And you see that we got two endpoints here. And if we just, and if we're just going to hit them, OK, so that's pretty basic. There was nothing kind of, but you can see how easy it is to deploy something, and straight away you get SSL termination, you get everything that you want, and there isn't a single server running, at least not my server. And because we deploy two endpoints, so the second one is basically the same, but you can see that here it's coming from handler 2, and this one is coming from handler 1. So that's a quick demo to show you how easy it is to deploy stuff. All right, back to this one. So yeah, just in case the demo wasn't working, so I prepared a few slides. Yeah, that's pretty much what I explained. Our endpoint, serverless magic, and how do I deploy, and the same. OK, so I mean, the question is, all right, so people get used to, you deploy something and you have SSH to a server and you can see it. But that's the problem with serverless or Lambda, because you don't have any servers. And if we look kind of where we got to, so before serverless, a basic EC2 setup would look something like that. It's very simplified, I know. But you have your user, which can be a mobile app, it can be a website. It's hitting one of your endpoints, and it goes into ELB, which is the elastic load balancer that AWS provide. You're probably going to have two availability zones, and each availability zone you define an auto-scaling group, which basically means a cluster of EC2 instances, and then you need to define things like when do we scale, when do we want to scale down, when we want to scale up, those kind of. So it's very kind of DevOps related, and you need someone to maintain it, and you need someone to make sure that you know how to scale up and down, and everything works together. After that, we started kind of instead of EC2, so we started to, we see a trend to going into containers. Things like Kubernetes, Docker Swarm, Nomad, but behind the scenes, it's the same thing. You have a load balancer, and you need to say, all right, I need to play with my cluster and see how many instances I need. So it's still very kind of DevOps oriented. And with serverless, this is all we have. I mean, we have an API gateway, which is a service that AWS provides, and you have a Lambda function. That's pretty much it. I mean, I don't care about the cluster size. I don't care about how many servers. Plain simple. And if we look at the AWS console, so after we deployed, you can see one function being deployed there. Runtime, you can see the same runtime. And you can see also that our function is connected, or Lambda function is connected to two services that the serverless kind of do it for us, the whole plugins. So one of them is API gateway, which we talked about, is your HTTP server. And the second one is, we're going to see in a few slides, are the CloudWatch logs, which all your logs go into this service. And this is also from the AWS console. That's the same code that we saw, basically just a zip file, and just upload it there. OK, so now we're getting to how we can integrate Express with serverless. So the question is, how do we move for something which is kind of Lambda-style code into something which is more kind of API Express style? And anyone can see a problem here. It's not syntax. It's compiling fine. OK, so we don't have a lot of time. But I mean, the problem is we need to bind to a port. That's kind of the basic thing that we need to do when we start our app. And the big question is, all right, which port do we need to bind to? Where is the server? It doesn't make sense, right? So this is where this is what I want to show you. So all we need to do to make Express.js and serverless talk together is we need to modify, obviously, the serverless YAML file, which means to proxy all requests through the Express.js routes. We're going to wrap the app object with, I must save twice. OK. We're going to wrap the app object with serverless HTTP module, which means we need to npm install it. And we're going to remove the port binding. And that's pretty much all. So if we look at the serverless YAML file again, you can see that we're adding a third function, which tells serverless, or tells the API gateway, everything that goes into /v2 goes into my handler, which we're going to see also soon. And then we need to modify the code. So we adding the serverless HTTP as a dependency. We remove the port binding, and we export the app as a Lambda function. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to show you again, quick demo. So that's my serverless YAML, and I'm going to comment in this code, save it. And I'm going to deploy again. I'm going to wait. So you see it's doing the same thing exactly. Hopefully it's going to be faster now. Come on. OK, it's going to go soon. And and praying to the god of demos. Okay. All right, yeah. So you can see that we got two new endpoints here. It's two, but it's basically just one function. And if we want to test again that things are working as expected, we're going to hit the v2 endpoint, which goes through Express. And good. So you can see that we got the Express.js. You can see here the code is basically just returning this string. So same function, but different method of kind of invoking it. OK, cool. Let's go back to the slides. All right, so next topic is offline testing, which is kind of obvious that we need to ask ourselves, how can we test our code before deploying? Because, again, we don't have any port we can bind to. We don't have any servers. So obviously, we don't wait for the whole deployment time, test something, see that it's not working, and then trying to fix it. So there are two ways. One of them is to use the serverless CLI, which has a great utility for invoking the local function. So you can see here, it's just doing SLS invoke local and the function name, and then the -p is just the input that you want to provide the function. And you can see the output, the same output that in the body, which is kind of JSON stringy. The second option, if we want to use Express, is adding a plugin to serverless, which is called Serverless Offline. Not a big surprise there. So we just add it to the plugins area in the serverless YAML. We need to install it, of course, with a debug dependency. That's important because we don't want to add because we don't want to add the dev dependencies into our package. It's just going to increase. The package size and the deployment time. And we just run in the shell SLS offline start, and you can see that we have a server running locally. You can also define the port, but the default port is 3000. And if we hit the endpoint locally, we're going to see the same thing exactly. So that's kind of an easy way to test our stuff. OK, so the question is, where is my log? And I kind of give you a hint before. So everything goes into a service called CloudWatch. And CloudWatch allows us to, so we can see the logs in two different ways. One of them is to run, I don't know if you can see here, SLS logs, function name, and if you add --tail, you can actually tail the log as you would tail a log file. You can see interesting stuff there, things like the time it was executed, the request ID, how much time does the function took to execute, and things like how much memory and billing duration, kind of a lot of interesting stuff. The second way is to go to the CloudWatch console, and you basically see the same stuff there as you do in the CLI utility. OK, we don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to rush through the next slide. So securing the endpoint, obviously security is a big issue, so I don't have a lot of time. So I'm going to just kind of briefly give you one method to secure endpoint. So once you deploy stuff into serverless, into Lambda, it's public by default. Unless you deploy it into a VPC network, which is basically like a private network you own on AWS. And serverless also provide you something they call a private function. And if we add the API keys and we're going to add another function, and we're going to mark it as private. And I'm not going to show you the deployment process again, but you can see that we got an API key and another endpoint we can call. And you can see here at the top, if we just hit the endpoint without any API key, you will just get a message saying forbidden, which is 403. And if we add, I don't know if you can see here, the header based on the API key we got from the deployment, you can see that the function is responding. So that's a kind of easy way to secure endpoints. And the last topic would be how we can keep our secrets. So AWS has a service called AWS System Manager, which is a really bad name, but we don't care about most of it. We only care about a thing called Parameter Store. And the good thing about serverless is that it has integration with it. So what I've done, I just created I created a new key. Any name can, you can also use / to kind of give it like a hierarchy. And if we add it to the environment variable in the serverless YAML file, and the syntax is SSM and the name of the key, and in our node.js code, we can just take the secret from the environment variable. And I'm not sure I have time for a demo, but I will try to do a quick one. I have time? Yeah? A minute? OK. All right, so I'll just go here. That was before. And I'm going to do the deployment again. We finish the deployment. Cool. I'm just going to hit the endpoint. And you can see that we got the secret here. So we didn't add the secret in the YAML file, so that's a good way to kind of keep your secrets out of the source control. OK, cool. So yeah, that's just in case the demo is not functioning. All right. So to sum up, because I'm just out of time, serverless Lambda, the good thing, there are many good things about it, but I mean the kind of the obvious one are it's easy to build, it's easy to scale, cost reduction, so it means less DevOps. Sorry for all the DevOps persons in the room. You pay for what you use. We saw that you never pay for idle. And the bad things, obviously there are bad things, and you have less control in your infrastructure. So you don't have servers, you don't have SSH access. It's not good for background jobs, and the reason is that the Lambda max timeout is 5 minutes, and if we connect it into API gateway, we only have 30 seconds to execute. After that, we get 502, and that's all. And your code and logs are obviously more distributed because your logs can spawn to different streams in CloudWatch. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.